In the heart of Siberia lies a place where hope goes to die, the White Swan Prison. This isn't just any prison. It's a fortress of concrete and despair, designed to break the will of Russia's most hardened criminals. Here, inmates aren't people, they're numbers. And our story begins with one such number, prisoner 734, formerly known as Ivan Volkov. Ivan had been a man of significance on the outside, a name whispered with respect and fear. But inside White Swan, he was nothing. The guards, with their stony faces and hollow eyes, enforced a brutal routine. Every day was a carbon copy of the last. The jarring clang of the morning bell, the tasteless gruel, the forced, back-breaking labor in the biting cold. The guards demanded absolute submission. Inmates were forced to bend at a 90-degree angle when moving, their eyes fixed to the floor, a constant physical reminder of their broken status. For Ivan, the worst part wasn't the physical hardship. It was the psychological warfare, the constant surveillance, the isolation, the systematic erasure of his identity. He fought to hold on to memories of his life before, the face of his wife, the sound of his daughter's laughter. These memories were his last bastion of self, the only thing the prison couldn't take from him. He'd whisper his own name in the dead of night. Ivan Volkov, a desperate mantra against the encroaching void. His cellmate, a weary old man named Dmitri, had long since surrendered. "The swan doesn't kill you," he'd rasped one evening, his voice a dry rustle. "It just hollows you out until you're an empty shell." But Ivan refused to become a shell. He found small ways to rebel, a moment of direct eye contact with a guard, a straightening of his back when no one was looking. Tiny acts of defiance that screamed, "I am still here." Then, things changed. A new guard arrived, a young man named Alexei. Unlike the others, Alexei didn't have the same lifeless look in his eyes. There was a flicker of something else, curiosity, perhaps even conflict. He watched Ivan with an intensity that was different from the cold scrutiny of the other guards. He noticed Ivan's small rebellions, the fire that hadn't been extinguished. One day, during a routine cell inspection, Alexei's eyes fell upon a small, crudely carved wooden bird Ivan had hidden under his mattress. It was a swan, a defiant mockery of their cage. The other guards would have beaten Ivan senseless and thrown him in solitary. Alexei just looked at it, then met Ivan's gaze. For a split second, there was a silent acknowledgement, a shared secret between two men on opposite sides of the bars. Alexei placed the bird back, concealing it just as he found it. He said nothing, but his action spoke volumes. It was a crack in the monolithic wall of oppression. For the first time in years, Ivan felt a spark ignite within him, something he had long thought extinguished, hope. The arrival of Alexei didn't promise freedom, but it introduced a variable into the prison's cruel equation. In a place designed to eliminate all humanity, a single, small act of humanity had just changed the entire game. Elsewhere in the prison, another man was watching. Sergei Morozov had been inside White Swan longer than most. He had seen men arrive strong and leave empty. He knew every sound, every schedule, every shadow. He also knew the prison's weakness. Paperwork. White Swan Prison ran on reports, logs, checklists. Guards trusted the system more than their own eyes. If a form was signed, a head count passed, a box checked, then order existed. The entire fortress was built not on steel and concrete, but on the flimsy foundation of bureaucratic trust. Sergei had worked in the prison library years ago, before privileges were taken away. It was there he learned how records moved, how information flowed through the veins of the institution, and more importantly, how mistakes were buried. Now, he was seeing something unusual. Names were being recorded twice. Timestamps on logs didn't match the actual events. A door log showed a gate was open when it should have been locked shut. These were small errors, almost insignificant on their own, but there were too many of them. The sheer volume was an alarm bell that only someone like Sergei could hear. The tension grew slowly, invisibly, like ice forming just under the surface of a frozen lake, ready to crack under the slightest pressure. Ivan and Sergei never spoke directly. They didn't need to. The prison had taught them a language beyond words. A book placed upside down on a shelf was a signal. A fractional pause during the morning march was a question. A tiny note, folded into a thread and hidden in a seam, was an answer. The message passing between them now was simple: something is wrong. Then came the night of the silence. It began during a routine transfer. Ivan was moved from his cell to another block. This happened often. The administration called it disrupting routines to prevent inmates from getting too comfortable or planning anything. A young, nervous guard escorted him down a long, sterile white hallway. The unblinking eyes of cameras watched from above. Doors opened with a hydraulic hiss and closed with a solid, final thud. Everything was mechanical precision. But at one checkpoint, the guard stopped. The pause stretched, becoming too long. His radio crackled with a burst of static, then went completely quiet. Ivan stood facing the wall, exactly as he was ordered. He didn't move a muscle. Seconds dripped by, turning into minutes. Still no footsteps. No commands. Just a thick, heavy silence. This was not normal. This was not a routine. Ivan did not turn around. Doing so would be a fatal mistake. But he listened with an intensity that could feel vibrations through the concrete floor. And then he heard it. Somewhere nearby, a door opened that shouldn't have. Then it closed. Still no alarm. No shouting. No running feet. The entire prison seemed to hold its breath. The silence was louder than any siren. The next morning, the head count was completed. The numbers were tallied. The guards made their rounds, and the reports were filed. Every number matched. Every cell was sealed. Every inmate was accounted for. According to the official records, nothing had happened. The system, the paperwork that Sergei knew so well, declared that the night had been perfectly ordinary. But Sergei noticed something else. Something the paperwork conveniently ignored. Ivan did not return to his block, and no transfer, temporary or permanent, was ever recorded. A man had vanished from inside the most secure, most controlled prison in the country. No escape, no report, no sound. That was when Sergei understood the terrifying truth. White Swan Prison was not just a place of isolation. It was a place where people could be erased, not just from the world, but from existence itself, wiped clean from the records, as if they were never there. And if Ivan Volkov, the master of finding patterns, had discovered how this was done, then the prison's greatest secret was already exposed. The question was no longer whether someone could disappear inside White Swan. The question was, who would be next? In the heart of the Gulag, a place where hope goes to die, one man's disappearance lit a fire that could not be extinguished. My name is Sergei Morozov, and this is my story. They threw me in here, in this forgotten corner of the earth, for speaking out against the system. Here, you learn to keep your head down, to become invisible. But one man, Ivan Volkov, was more than just another number. He was a spark of defiance in a world of gray. Ivan wasn't a political prisoner like me. He was a thinker, an artist, a man who saw color where there was only concrete. He'd sketch scenes of freedom on scraps of paper with charcoal stolen from the furnace. He talked of a world beyond these walls, not with despair, but with a certainty that was both infectious and dangerous. He gave us hope, a commodity more precious than bread in this place. Then, one morning, he was gone. Not transferred, not released. Vanished. The guard said he never existed. His bunk was empty, his name scrubbed from the records. It was as if a ghost had been erased from a photograph. But I remembered. We all did. The fear was thick enough to choke on. If they could erase Ivan, they could erase any of us. The official story was nonsense, and I knew it. Ivan was too loud, too bright. He was a problem they needed to solve, not with a bullet, but with an eraser. I started digging, quietly, carefully. I traded my meager rations for whispers in the dark corners of the yard. I listened to the guards' careless chatter, piecing together fragments of a puzzle I wasn't sure I wanted to solve. The whispers spoke of the cleansing, a program designed not to reform, but to remove, to take problematic inmates and wipe them from history itself. It wasn't about execution, it was about nullification. The conspiracy went deeper than I could have imagined, a shadow operation hidden within the prison's ironclad bureaucracy. The more I learned, the more I realized Ivan wasn't the first, and he wouldn't be the last. I found his last sketch, hidden beneath a loose floorboard in our cell. It wasn't of a beautiful landscape or a memory of home. It was a map, a crude drawing of the prison's sublevels, areas that officially didn't exist. There was a single point marked with an X and a word scribbled next to it. Archive. This was it. This was where Ivan went. He didn't run. He went looking for proof. Now his fight has become mine. I have to find this archive. I have to uncover what they're hiding in the darkness beneath our feet. They want to erase us, to make the world forget we ever drew breath. But they made one crucial mistake. They forgot that memory is a weapon, and the truth, once unearthed, can tear down the strongest walls. They think they've silenced Ivan Volkov. They think they can silence me. But a story, once told, can never be truly erased. I am no longer just Sergei Morozov, prisoner 734. I am the keeper of a memory, the voice for the vanished. And I will not be silenced. I will find the truth, or I will be erased trying. The walls are listening, but so am I. My search for the archive begins now. The next morning, something was different. During the routine inspection, Sergei felt a pair of eyes on him. A guard. His stare lingered a moment too long, his jaw tight with an unspoken message. Sergei looked away, but the cold realization washed over him. He had been noticed. And in a place like White Swan, being noticed was the most dangerous thing you could be. Outside the prison walls, a different kind of unease was growing. Ivan Volkov's sister hadn't received a letter in weeks. This wasn't normal. Even from the depths of White Swan, letters, though delayed and censored, always came. She wrote to the prison, but her letters vanished into silence. No reply. She called the regional office, and a detached voice assured her Ivan was alive, simply serving his sentence. But when she asked to speak to him, the line went cold. Visits were suspended. Every family of an inmate lives with a constant, simmering fear, but this was different. Sharper, more specific. It felt like Ivan had been erased, and the system was pretending he never existed. Back inside, Sergei made a choice. Silence was a death sentence. He had to leave a trace. During his work detail, he risked everything. A small, crumpled piece of paper slipped into a trash cart destined for the administrative offices. On it, he'd scrawled just 3 words, "Check Ivan Volkov." It was a tiny spark in an ocean of darkness, a desperate gamble. But doing nothing was worse. Days later, the prison clamped down. Hard. Suddenly, there were extra inspections, surprise cell searches. The few privileges they had were revoked. Isolation became the new norm. White Swan was reacting the only way it knew how, with overwhelming pressure. It was clear someone outside was digging, and the prison was determined to crush whatever they found. Without warning, Sergei was moved. A new block, a new cell. Colder. Smaller. The light buzzing overhead stayed on longer into the night. It was a clear message, stop what you're doing. But he didn't. He started listening more intently, counting the guards' footsteps, mapping the prison's sounds, turning his small world into a grid of echoes and whispers. And then, one night, he heard it again. 3 taps. Faint, but this time closer. It came from the wall behind his bunk. Sergei pressed his ear against the cold, rough concrete. The taps came again. Weak, but undeniably real. Someone was in there. Someone the prison insisted did not exist. He closed his eyes, the truth hitting him like a physical blow. If Ivan Volkov was alive, then the prison was lying. And if the prison was lying about one man, then this entire fortress was built on a secret it couldn't afford to keep. Because secrets, especially in a place like this, eventually rot. And rot spreads. The next morning, his cell door swung open. 2 guards. No explanation. No paperwork. They marched him down a corridor he'd never seen before, the white paint on the walls older here, cracked and peeling, forgotten by time. At the very end of the hall was a single door. No number. No camera. One guard pulled out his keys, the jingle echoing in the silence. And from behind that door, someone knocked. 3 times. The door opened without a sound. Inside, there was no window, no bed, no clock, just a narrow concrete room and a man sitting against the wall. Ivan Volkov. He was thinner. His hair had gone gray in places. His eyes adjusted slowly to the light, like someone waking from a long night. He looked up, and when he saw Sergei Morozov, he did not speak. He only nodded. Because in White Swan Prison, words could still kill you. The guards did not push Sergei inside. They stood still, watching, waiting. Sergei understood then. This was not punishment. This was a warning. They wanted him to see what happened to men who refused to disappear quietly. The door closed, locked, and for the first time in his life, Sergei was inside a room the prison said did not exist. Time lost meaning. There was no way to tell day from night. Food arrived without pattern. Sometimes hours passed in silence. Sometimes days. Ivan finally spoke in a voice so weak it felt borrowed. "They erased me," he said. Sergei listened. Ivan explained how he had been taken after refusing to sign a statement admitting guilt for crimes he insisted he did not commit. The confession was already written. All they needed was his name. When he refused, they stopped asking. They stopped recording. They stopped acknowledging him. They said, "I would stay here until I agreed," Ivan said, "or until I was forgotten." Sergei realized the truth was worse than death. White Swan did not need executions. It had patience. Outside the walls, Ivan's sister did not stop. She contacted lawyers, human rights groups, journalists. Most ignored her. Some warned her. One listened. A reporter requested official confirmation of Ivan Volkov's status. For the first time, the prison delayed its response. That delay mattered, because silence attracts attention. Inside the hidden cell, Sergei and Ivan waited. Then one morning, footsteps rushed instead of marched. Keys shook. Voices argued. The door opened. Not guards. Officials. Men in clean coats with clipboards and questions. The prison had lost control of the story. Records were reviewed. Logs examined. The paper truth collapsed. There was no transfer order. No medical record. No disciplinary ruling. Ivan Volkov had been erased without legal process. And Sergei Morozov was proof it was not a mistake. It was a system. White Swan Prison did not fall. It did not close. But it changed. The hidden cells were sealed. New oversight rules were announced. Investigations began. Quiet ones. Controlled ones. Because institutions rarely admit guilt loudly. Ivan Volkov was returned to an official cell. Months later, his conviction was reviewed. The confession that never existed could not be found. Without it, the case collapsed. Ivan walked out years later into daylight he barely recognized. Sergei remained inside. But his punishment stopped. He was no longer invisible. White Swan Prison still stands. Clean. Silent. Controlled. But now people know. They know that somewhere inside its perfect order, men once vanished without records. They know silence was used as a weapon. And they know one truth the prison could never erase. Even the strongest walls cannot hold a lie forever. Because someone always listens. And someone always knocks. 3 times. Thanks for watching. Kindly like and subscribe for more crime documentary stories.